Hello, Simone. Today we are going to be doing a deep dive on what some have called the femcel shooter because of a incorrect and forged manifesto that was shared around shortly afterwards, where
What?
she looked like she subscribed to femcel ideology. But if you dig deeper, it was pretty obvious that it was forged. Like if you actually go into it, and the real manifesto, I was able to find it after a lot of research.
Oh, so there is a manifesto. It's just that the wrong manifesto was shared at first.
Yes, because she idiotically forgot to make her document public before going on the mass shooting.
Oh, that's like when you accidentally forward an email to the wrong person, you know?
Her boyfriend had to make it public, which I think really blows the idea of her being a femcel out of the water.
Her
And
boyfriend
as
did it
we
for
go
her.
through, because we'll go through a few of the longer snippets from her manifesto,
Okay.
it'll be pretty clear that she is probably closest to a 4chaner in ideology, like a stereotypical 4chaner, very black pilled. And I would say that this shooting was downstream of an extreme black pilling of the youth who just don't believe there's hope in anything, or that the older generation understands them or has any sort of plans for them or any good advice for them. And yeah, I agree with that across the board in terms of I think that we are at risk of many more such shootings like this if we allow this rampant nihilism to continue to spread. And it is being pushed by the newest update of the urban monoculture, not the update
Mhm.
from a couple generations ago, not the one that has affected most adults, but the new one sort of follows the nothing strategy from Neverending Story.
People have begun to lose their hopes and forget their dreams. So the nothing grows stronger. It's the emptiness that's left. It is like a despair destroying this world. I have been trying to help it because people who have no hopes are easy to control.
I can't remember that. All I remember from Never Ever
Did you,
Ending Story is coming away with this like oppressive feeling of depression and nihilism. What is that in what are you
the
talking about?
gist is that those without hope are easy to control.
Okay. 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 Well, and that's
Uh,
checks out. That seems to be what's going on. Okay.
when you get rid of human creativity and human ingenuity and hope for a better future, even though I've like literally never, I actually sat down with Simone and was like, we may live to a post-work era.
Yeah.
Like when we are old, it might be that only work is happening voluntarily, which is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah.
There is a lot of reason to be optimistic about the future. But I wouldn't have been optimistic about her place in it because she seemed exceedingly stupid. And we'll go into that as well.
Wow. Okay. Fighting words.
Okay, not really. When you read it, you're like, oh,
Really?
that
Okay.
like
I know nothing
like,
about
does she
this.
have a
So yeah,
mental
please
disability
bring me
or
up to
something?
speed.
Okay, great. And the thing that will surprise people, just first, I'll put some pictures on screen here of her, is she is white. And for a 15-year-old girl, it looks like she would have grown up to be a fairly attractive woman.
She's going through her awkward teenage phase at this point.
No, I'm
But
not. I'd
oh,
say probably top 10% attractiveness in
oh,
terms
so
of
she was
women.
okay. So yeah, she wasn't deformed. She wasn't, and she had a boyfriend. Like, so she wasn't.
She was thin. She had a decent looking face. And again, this is all in the context of I am trying to judge a 15-year-old's future attractiveness, not me talking about how
Well,
attractive she was
I
at
think you're
15.
also trying to point out, like, is this because she was incredibly ugly in some way that would lead her to be bullied and extra blackpilled by the world because she wasn't attractive? But that clearly wasn't the issue.
Yeah, that
There
clearly
was no
wasn't the issue.
technical issue with her appearance in a way that could have radicalized her. It had to have been something else, is what you're saying.
She comes off, and you'll see this as I go through this, if you're familiar with the story of Creepy Chan,
Mm.
pretty similar to Creepy Chan.
Oh, okay.
Or early Bella Delphine, if you're familiar with her story,
Okay.
where she was basically raised in environments like 4chan,
Wow.
and tried to customize her appearance and humor and attitude to be like that people on those sites respect.
Hmm.
Okay, so the attack took place during a Oh, sorry. On December 16th, 2024, a tragic shooting occurred at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin. The shooter has been identified as Natalie Rapanau, a 15-year-old female student who also went by the name Samantha or Sam, you see in some of the correspondence. Here is what we know about the incident and the shooter. The attack took place during a study hall session, resulting in the deaths of 2 people, a teacher and another teenage student. 6 others were injured, with 2 in critical condition. Rapanau died from what the authorities believe to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The gun used was a 9mm handgun. Her parents, Melissa and Jeff Rapanau, had been divorced and remarried multiple times. She mentions this in her manifesto. They had a joint custody arrangements that sometimes required Natalie to move between homes every few days. Enrolled Natalie in therapy to help her cope with the custody arrangements. And Natalie had joined a shooting range with her father in the months before the incident. And a photo from August showed her at the firing range wearing protective gear and handling a firearm. Her father was quite proud of this, and they seemed to, or he believed that she enjoyed her time there. She also participated in karate competitions. Now, she was intensely obsessed with school shooters, and in her manifesto talks about a number she considers herself a fangirl of, so we'll get to that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Her
So
shooter itself,
normally martial arts and participating in safe firearm use at a gun range is correlated with more responsible gun use behavior. So this was surprising.
yeah. Well, no, it's clear that she went into all of this with the intention of doing a school shooting.
Like she
So
wasn't raised with it. It kind of was something she took
talked
on
her
in an
dad
attempt.
into.
Okay, so it's not like her dad raised her going to gun ranges. Like, this is gun safety.
Yeah.
We're a gun family. It was more like, hey, Dad, I really want to go to the gun range together. It'll help us bond. Wouldn't you like me to like you more than my mom, etc.? Something like that.
Yeah, and we'll see later in this, her argument for why she did this could basically be boiled down to, I decided that my life had no hope and the future has no hope, so I decided to commit suicide, but wouldn't that be a lame way to die? Why don't I remove some other weak genes from the gene pool in the process and remove some of the filth that is humanity from the planet of the Earth?
Oh, come on. All right.
So she sort of was an antinatalist, you could almost argue, but like an incel
just
black
like
pill version of an
hateful.
antinatalist.
Yeah, that antinatalist. The antinatalist view is, let's just all end the line. It ends with us.
Well,
But
keep in mind, she also believed, quote unquote, she had written this, that she was the mistake they never wanted of her parents. And speaking of both school and home, they look at me but don't see me. I am invisible until I do something they can't ignore. And I'll just go straight for the document. I think that's a better way to do it.
okay.
But before I go into the document, I also wanted to talk a bit about how this document was found. And you know what? I'll just put the tweets on screen here. But yeah, there's a series of tweets about the fake femcel version of the manifesto that was going around. And that is what actually motivated the release of the real document. The boyfriend was not going to release it at start, but people were basically like, look, people are using this to spread like an ideology that wasn't hers, using her death. Like, either release the real document or this fake document's going to gain more traction. I will note some interesting things about going through the entire manifesto, because it was like 4 or 5 pages, is that it doesn't really talk about sexual frustration. It doesn't really talk about anything about being a woman or anything like that as being a bad thing. So it doesn't appear to be particularly gender based. Although she does think that everyone has a disgusting body. She mentions that at one point. But that is not like I'm angry at men sort of thing. She doesn't mention politics at all in the document. So this wasn't anything that was particularly politically motivated. She doesn't mention anything that seems stereotypically woke. She seems to have been fairly allergic to that. And a lot of it is basically self-pitying, I guess I'd say.
She's a teenage girl. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'll start quoting here. Maybe you'll see me as a weirdo, a freak, just as some of you do now, but I'm not. I'm not like the others. I would never want to be like them.
We'll always be freaks and we'll never be like other people.
You're boring. And you're totally ordinary. And you know it.
with how they think and what they do on a simple day. I hate how the population thinks, grows, and talks about how they make romance fake. If only some days we could do a public execution, that would be gladly needed. I wouldn't mind throwing some stones at idiots or even watching from the far back when they get hanged. And then, so you get a lot of stuff like this, like very violent sort of 4chan-y, but also very self-pitying and very desiring to be unique. I am not like other people is a constant theme of this, which we've seen. There's like teenage girls go through
This is
I
a
am
classic teenage girl,
They
tendency.
could have
instinct.
maybe been cured had she seen American Beauty.
There's nothing worse in life than being ordinary.
I know, because it would have made her feel so
Gross
embarrassed by
about
this.
having these ideas.
Yeah, or like the virgin suicides. Yeah, she'd just be like, "Oh, this is too basic. I can't do that."
But
Yeah,
there
'cause
hasn't been a movie.
it was painful hearing that because parts of it sounded like my teenage diaries, my angsty days. And I'm
We
sure
have those
many
somewhere,
women
right?
can
We should
relate.
like read them at some point on the show.
Maybe not.
But they are very fun to read. and very
Angsty. Well,
self-aware.
especially when I was a teen, they were incredibly angsty. And reading this takes me back. I mean, part of me is thinking it's a wonder more girls don't do school shootings, because in the end, like they're scary. People are afraid of teen boys and school shooting. It's the girls who are scary. That's why we originally decided to have boys first, because I was terrified of having 2 teen girls leading the tone in our family.
Now,
And we were able to
I
choose
will
one.
note here, girls almost never commit mass shootings. This is very rare.
Yeah,
You
this
can
is
say that
extremely.
there have been more mass shootings by trans women in the last 4 years, I think, than there have been by women in the last 20 years.
That makes sense.
so
She is
the-
bringing DEI to school shootings. She's
it's
shooting the
really
glass
wild.
ceiling, as it were. But I am thinking also about the Salem witch trials. This was an incredibly violent series of events that was driven by.
Yeah, very, very, very good point. If you're
getting a
not
little
from
bit when
America-
she's like, I would like to throw a rock at them. I would like to watch as they, get executed. She could be in Salem.
right.
in
So
colonial
you're not
America.
an American and you don't know what she's referring to. Describe the Salem witch trials quickly.
So the Salem witch trials took place in the town of Salem, Massachusetts, when a bunch of pilgrims sort of had a mass hysteria event led by a small clique of female teenage girls who started accusing various members of the town of witchcraft. There was a slave involved who kind of got coerced into feeding into the narrative as well. I think she might have been the first adult to kind of feed into this witchcraft narrative and accusing people of practicing witchcraft. But in the end, a sizable number of people were killed. One very innocent man was crushed to death in a pretty ballsy way. He basically just, whenever they asked him to confess his sins, he would just say, more weight. And it was one of these instances of teenage females being incredibly violent and evil and Machiavellian and uncaring and psychopathic. And so this doesn't seem too far from that. And I think, having been a teenage female, I get that they're scary. They're scarier than teenage boys by a long shot.
When they decide to go scary. By the way, a movie I'd note, if you want to watch a movie about teen girls being crazy, that I think is really good and hugely underrated, Ginger Snaps 2. Not
fun.
one, Ginger Snaps 2.
Yeah.
Amazing movie, hugely like underplayed as a cult classic.
But see, that's crazy in a fun way. And I think what would have been more helpful in terms of making the concept of being a school shooter and suicidal school shooter too cringe for this young lady would have been something like the Virgin Suicides or American Beauty, like you pointed out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there hasn't been a movie like that in a really long time.
Yeah, it's been too long.
Too long since we have made it cringe to be a young teenage girl desiring to be
It's a public service, clearly. We got to get back to this. Make it too basic. Yeah.
Okay, so here is a quote from it that I think will throw off the idea that this might have been an overly left-leaning person.
Mm.
So here, obviously, I'm not going to say the N-word, but she uses the N-word.
Oh boy.
And then she says, but it's only in one section, like one paragraph she mentions this, and it's a complete non sequitur from where it is in the document,
Is
which
she
is really
just
weird.
doing it to be edgy? Is she just trying to make it clear that
She's
she's
just
not
being
like other
edgy. I
girls
suppose
PM?
some of the other shooters she admired did it, and then she decided she was really trying to like simp for male mass school shooters. This is clearly part of this for her.
I think
Um,
fangirling is another bad symptom or just uncomfortable symptom of being a teenage female. This is just one of those perfect storms of every way in which teenage femalehood was manifested in her was manifested in exactly the wrong flavor.
Yes. So she says, in words, though worse, once you sleep with them, you are one. I don't care who you think you are or what you think you've done good for this world of yours. It will never matter because you will always have no thought and no brain to continue with. I hate looking at some of the people in society and seeing what they are and what they do with their lives. Like, how does one do that? But I know how, out of scum and just pure retardedness. So you can see it's very like meandering and doesn't really have a point. It's almost like somebody trained an AI on 4chan.
Yeah.
To go
Mm.
further here, I'm glad to be different and not the same as other people. I know how to be formal. I know how to use my words. Even if I get mad at you, there has always been a good reason, whether or not I despise you or just because I can. There's always been a good reason. Either I despise you or just because I can. I don't know if that's a good reason, just because I can.
Again, this
Some of
is so teenage girl writing.
some of you guys, a very teenage girl. It's teenage girl distilled. Some of you guys
Oh.
really do deserve the execution punishment, rather painful or not. You deserve to be dead, but yet doesn't the whole world deserve that? The main target has been anyone with some sort of feeling or being or knowing any action to turn you wrong and left rather than the right and the better. So I that might be saying that she's right wing there. I can't really make it out. This is what she had to say after praising a number of other mass shooters about the Columbine mass shooters. She goes, I've looked into him since like 2021 and 2022, and she has a picture of him. And I've just realized how much potential bombs have. But it's not just that, though. It's his strategy, his own method, and what led him to do it. And the fact that he stuck to that. Some of his fangirls are like really strange, in my opinion. But like, aren't all fangirls? So she's like questioning being in this fangirl community for school shooters. And then she goes on to say, there are also others I admire, or so I'd like to say look up to, and or find interesting otherwise. Most are just interesting to me. Unlike those retarded FAG fucks who simp over them, like, come on, just stop. So you can see very
This just sounds like a teenage girl's diary, and gosh. Yeah, go on.
No, but we live in a society. We had a teen girl who we were helping at one point, and she would say stuff that sounded sort of like this sometimes. Not like this, but like very like, I'm different. No one's like me. And I'm like, everybody thinks that. The number one thing you need to remember when you're a teenager is be nice to your parents. That's what I'd say is the number one thing I'd impart to teenagers, because that's going to be the strongest instinct that you need to overcome to learn to intergenerationally strive. Because
Well,
you
what's
will
also
have a
just so
desire.
interesting is it's hard for me to model. Like, I have never seen this trope come through in a teenage girl or boy who is from a large family. There's
I haven't either.
something that having a lot of siblings, that having a life in which by design you are presented with responsibilities and limitations and hardship, but in a meaningful way. And by meaningful, I mean it's because there's something else that matters more instead of just, oh, this random bad thing happened.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. Not a single school shooter I'm aware of has been from a large family.
Yeah, has had more than one sibling, per my understanding. Maybe
That's wild, actually.
Well, we have to look up that claim, of course, and actually check.
Okay, so I went through a lot of AIs trying to find if any could find a single school shooter from an intact family with more than one sibling. I'm even talking just two siblings. Could not find a single one. Now, some had parents who had remarried or married other people and had a number of half siblings, but here I'm looking for large intact families. It seems to have 100% protection rate against somebody going crazy and becoming a school shooter, which is just wild. And, the next time somebody's like, hey, we need to stop these school shootings, we should ban guns, you can be like, or start having lots of kids again. That would also stop it.
But yeah, I just, even when it comes to general angstiness, sullenness, no, of course, even in Hannah's Children, the amazing book on like very big prenatalist families, there were some families that reported having depressed teens who were struggling a little bit, but not in an angsty, weird way like this.
What you pointed out to me, I thought was really interesting, is there was a case called the Wolf Children of 5 kids that were raised in a cramped Manhattan apartment, like
Mhm.
a small studio apartment in Manhattan, which they only left once per year, if that. Some years they
Yeah.
didn't leave at all.
Yeah.
And there was like 7 or 8 of them living together. It might have been as high as 12, but
it was smaller than, yeah, it was maybe in the like 7 range. It was a
they
lot.
ended up becoming like, they did a video documentary on them, and if you watch the documentary, cognitively and emotionally, they are much more mature than most random teenagers you would meet.
Yes, which is
really
crazy. Yes, you would expect them to be completely out of whack and terribly regulated and everything, but in the end, living with those limitations, living in such close quarters with other people, having to make that work forced them to be reasonable and patient and
No,
strong.
I don't think that that's my takeaway from it. My
You don't
takeaway
think
from
that's
it
what it
is
was?
that the cognitive stabilization and benefits of having lots of siblings is
Mhm.
so astronomically high, it
Hmm.
can outweigh being locked in a room your entire life, basically. You can be
Yeah,
raised
yeah.
like a feral child, basically, and if you have lots of siblings, you will be better off than your single kid who's going to tennis camp and going to the shooting range with her dad and who the parents spend tons of time on. That is how much it matters in terms of cognitive stability to have a huge number of siblings.
Well, I think siblings are very grounding because they constantly remind you that the world isn't about you, that everything's not just about you and your needs, that you are not entitled to anything, and that you can gain a lot of benefit from caring for other people and feel genuine reward and pleasure by helping someone else before you help yourself. There's just so many good things that come from it. And as someone who had bad dreams as an only child, in which my parents told me I was going to have a little sibling, who just thought it was the worst thing ever to have siblings, it's so weird for me to now acknowledge this. I feel a little uncomfortable saying it.
Yeah. All right. So we keep going here.
Yeah.
Nobody knows I'm doing this. I've got the weapons by lies and manipulation and my father's stupidity. I
Oh,
planned on shooting myself a while ago, but thought maybe it's better for evolution rather than just one stupid, boring suicide, which hopefully I'll reach that point. I've planned this myself and nobody else. I act alone. There would have been no way to change what happened. You can't and never will know. You never cared too much to know anything about me. I'm glad you don't know. So clearly here, this is like, I'm better than my caretaker. And teens go through this phase. Do they think their parents are
yeah.
idiots?
No,
And
these are all very natural feelings. And again, I think the problem is that it's also it's a natural and important thing as well, I think, as a teenager and as someone becoming an adult, in the process of becoming an adult, to realize that, yeah, you don't matter. No one cares what you think. No one cares how you feel. You really don't matter. I think an issue that I see with modern parenting is that you're being gaslit as a teen and told that your feelings do matter and people do care what you think.
absolutely, yes,
And
yes.
her parents are like, "Oh, no, you're so special. We care what you think. You mean so much to us." But she knows it's not true. And now here
Yes.
she's dealing with it in this really obviously toxic and tragic way.
Yes. And I know here, this is the interesting thing. When you look at like why she's mad at her parents and stuff like that,
Hmm.
everyone's like, oh, you guys are so horrible to your kids. Like you bop them, etc. Like, how could you do that? I haven't seen anything like that. Kids don't whine about stuff like that in their letters like this or manifestos like this. It's like my parents got divorced and remarried multiple times. My parents didn't take the time to understand me. My parents were stupid and weak. That's the general complaints you see about parents. In fact, I see I was disgusted at how weak my parents are. Specifically, my father was, to be the most common complaint in the incel world.
Really? Well, I think most people, if they're not, I guess, okay, yes, being a teen, you hit this point where you discover that your mother and dad are not God, that they're not flawless, they do not know everything. Because I think there's this period between, we'll say, I don't know, we haven't hit it with our kids yet. Maybe from 6 to 10, where kids seem to think very highly of their parents. And
Yes.
then it hits them, oh my gosh, these people are human. And it's this huge upset. And that's normal. That's very normal.
It is normal, but what I was noting here is that if you are afraid of failing your kids somewhere on the spectrum, if you read a lot of the writing that young people are putting out there, which I have because I've spent time on like 4chan and Crystal Cafe and all this stuff, the complaint that young people have about their parents, which I'm trying to hit home, is not the complaints that previous generations had.
Oh, that they were too strict with me. They were too.
It's not they were too
Cool.
strict with me. It's not that they were never around. It's either, and I've seen this mirrored complaint a lot, and she seems to argue this complaint as well. It's that my mom settled for a weak man. Like she should have been more, what's the word here?
Hypergamous?
Yeah, she should have been more hypergamous, basically.
This is a complaint people have now? Why
Yes,
wasn't my
because-
mom? What?
They blame the weakness of their father for their own weakness. They're like, I am either weak or ugly or not
Because
motivated or not creative because I got bad genes from my dad.
That is weird. That's a meme? Like that's a thing? That
It's like a hardcore, yes, a hardcore meme, especially in incel circles.
Ooh.
And it makes sense because when you break out of the urban monoculture, the first thing that people realize and that floods their mind, if you have any like degree of breaking out, and young people are going to break out always. So what the urban monoculture has been pushing with them is nihilism, but then, human genes exist and I am a large part, a reflection of my genes. So if I'm a young kid and I hate myself, it must be because I have bad genes. And then there's this sort of side assumption, which is, and I don't know why the moms always get a pass, but they generally seem to get a pass in these. Like her mom.
This me.
I think it's
I
because
thought teen girls really hate their moms.
It's not that she liked her mom, but I think it's that she learned from incel forums how to speak about her dad and the way to speak about her dad that would earn her respect.
They just have more to say about men. Yeah.
Well, I think it's more disgusting to be weak as a male.
Okay.
If a female is weak in our society, we don't treat that as like this huge failure. Whereas if a male doesn't stand his ground or show discipline and order for his kids or show a vision and a desire to achieve that for his own life, it's very easy for kids to grow up denigrating him. And you'll see this a lot. So I just think that people are hugely optimizing for things kids don't care about. Kids don't care how frequently you're around. That was like 2 generations ago. Kids don't care that you're too strict or you're shoving your value system on them. What kids do care about in this generation is you being pathetic. So be careful about that. Okay, so next. I've always been a quiet kid, I say, or at least that's what everyone else around me has said, and never really had the brains for most things because I wasn't smart enough for people around me, even though I'm good at science and some stuff. Nobody really looked at me in a good way in elementary or middle school, nor even high school right now. Doesn't matter much because I like being alone. Very sour grapesy, right? Like I want attention, but I also don't want to deal with people. Sometimes I just hate being picked on, but yet I mourn for friends, but sooner than later they'll leave. My therapist sucks. He's just some weak, fat guy who doesn't deserve everything he has now. Nobody deserves anything good. So a lot of this is based.
Girls are so scary. I don't know what to say.
It's very teen girl. Like, that's why I believe this. Like, I read this and I was like, this is so
No,
15-year-old.
this checks out. I don't know what the other Femcel manifesto, the fake one, read like, but this is not questionable. Yeah. I mean, if it didn't seem like something written by a teen girl, I would have just assumed that it was a teen girl using AI, but I don't think anyone has so little dignity that they would use AI to write their
Oh no, it has
suicidal
so many
manifesto.
mistakes in it. I mean, the grammatical mistakes I'm making here are not me misreading it. Like, it's really poorly structured. Like, it's clear that this was not a fully educated human being. And a lot of people have said, actually, this is pretty normal grasp of English of 15-year-olds these days, just because the education system is so bad.
Yeah.
And the other reason I believe this one is because it doesn't seem to have an agenda. It's not painting her as a specific type of person. And there's an awful lot of complaint about why she hates her parents for silly reasons.
Yeah, it's just female. Again, like I
Hold
was.
on. What I think is interesting is the repeated, like, not just her dad, but like other male authority figures in her life.
That is
She's
interesting.
disgusted by their weakness.
Yeah.
She's disgusted by the weakness of society, which she sees as filthy.
I think that's a product for sure of what she's been exposed to, that we have this equation of female angst, which is the volume is turned way up by being an only child or an almost only child with hands-on parents in a stifling, smothering society. And then she's exposed to this series of memes that's very tough on men, and rather than turn her hate inward like a lot of teenage girls do and just do the normal thing, start cutting, develop an eating disorder, go trans, she decides to then become a school shooter. So she is quite indeed not like other girls in that way.
Well, I mean, think about the way that she's approaching this, which I find really fascinating, is that if you look at the femcells, they look at men and are like, there is a patriarchal structure that is stomping on us. There is, like, it's this cabal of men. They see men as like this unifying force that, like,
They
puts
work
women
together.
down.
They text each
I
other.
think, represents a new wave of disgust and anger with men, which is to say, why are men so weak? Why as growing up are the men I see so disgustingly desiring affirmation, desiring of weak and pathetic things? Where are the strong men, the men that I want around me, the men that I want in society? Which is such a different complaint than you would get from a typical femcel, right? You know, it's almost like a true femcel, and that she's like outright admitting it. Like, what I mean by this is, it's not that I can't get anyone to sleep with me, it's that no men are worthy of existing in this society. Although, again, she did have a boyfriend, so. To continue. My so-called family never included me because I was too weird for them. Again, this whole, like, I'm different thing. My father never treated me with respect. My father was always make me stand out in the worst possible way, yet bring up how I fail at school or can't get out of bed simply because I don't want to leave home. He makes me look like a freak to his family and friends. He says so much, but look on his bad side. So here you see, this is something that young girls, especially, and in your diary I even saw this, you were like, why am I freaking out that, like, my parents are cheering for me at a sports game? Like, they're trying to be nice. You had the ability to, like, have some self-reflection on, like, why do I care that my parents are trying to help me out?
I'm crazy. That's what's happening.
And I'd also point out here that what kids are afraid of is their parents in impotent ways trying to get them to do things. It's not their parents in effective ways trying to get them to do things. And I think it's the impotence of the way her father interacted with her, as well as the social shaming and connection of himself to her in these, you know, big in-person environments that created this kind of language. One of the ways I think that will really help avoid this with our daughters and boys, for that extent, is I really want to include them in the podcast. I really want to include them in our social media in the same way that I talk with you. I'd love to have days where it's one of them or something like that, you know, or two of them instead of us, you know, make this more of a family affair. And I think that if you have somebody regularly publicly broadcasting the way that they're thinking about things and people notice red flags, like the type of red flags that she was clearly exhibiting, they can help constructively steer them back onto a good path. And these sorts of deep conversations where she got to signal what she thought is something that is clear that she just wasn't having with important people in her life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It was all going online or
Yeah.
inward, which was very toxic for her.
And people can be like, well, won't your kids find some outlet like that? Unlikely, because if your parents, and this is the way that's actually happened to me now because we have such a big audience, I like stopped responding to Facebook or comments or anything like that because I'm like, I know this person has built rage in me and I want to explain to them why they're so stupid, but why am I wasting time responding to this person when at any given time, day or night, there's over 100 people watching me? Like, I should be focused on the messages that I'm putting out to a wider platform, not this one individual on Facebook who pissed me off.
Yeah, maybe. And there's also that element that I think a lot of everyone wants to be heard in some way. And for many people, feeling like they're heard by some audience online may be some way to make them feel better, I suppose. So like
Yeah.
she might have felt sufficiently heard if she felt she had an audience that engaged with her ideas, however small it may be. I don't know. I'm not sure.
No, but it's really hard. No, it's clear. She mentions that a few times. If she had a wider audience, she wouldn't have done this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But because a lot of the social capital of today's youth is based on how many people are watching you, are looking at you online, which I think she felt like, especially as AI begins to grow, like, am I ever going to have that? Am I ever going to have people who care what I say or think or am doing?
That's
You're so
interesting.
stupid. All right, so next. I was the wrong child of the family. My parents admit they didn't want me nor ever did, even if I'm grown. I'm always the one who sat around in the other room because they didn't want to interact with me at any point in time. Then I stayed in my room all day during the day and night and after and before school as well. Again, you can see not incredibly bright. And this is why I don't think that this is a faked manifesto. It's just,
I would say articulate. The word you're looking for is articulate. She could be very bright and just not have been instructed well in writing.
okay, but I think if she was, she would have at least put it through an AI to fix the grammar. I mean, if it's the last thing that's going out there.
I think a lot of people don't show their kids these resources. We've met plenty of kids of really, really smart, articulate people who have not even really told their kids about AI. And they live in sheltered enough worlds where they're not using those tools to cheat on everything yet. I think that AI adoption is pretty lumpy, even among young people.
That makes sense. Yeah, maybe she just didn't engage with it. And I also want to note on this last one that I thought was pretty interesting is she talks about her parents not wanting her. And this brings me to the part of pronatalism that I get so disgusted with, which is the pronatalists that are like, it is pronatalist to ban condoms and to ban pornography.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like, you want someone to get someone pregnant because like they couldn't like get off? Like, are you really that like insane of a person? Like, no, we don't want the people to exist who only exist because their parents lacked self-control.
Yeah, not cool.
Not cool. Insane, actually. I am not hate. I am simply pointing this out. You and the system will always suck. Therefore, we need a revolution. Nobody understands that, though. Nor do people understand the fact that they probably sat next to me in class and never thought a single word about me, nor ever really thought to. I don't really care, though, to be honest. Nobody really has. But such teen angst here, first of all. Like, she wants people to think about her and to notice her, but she also wants to not focus on people. We talk about what it is to go through puberty as a young girl, and it's a desire to be treasured. And that's not what she's feeling in society, and it was not something she was able to generate.
Well, it's horrible because it's a desire to be treasured, often accompanied by, not always, but often accompanied by a disgust with oneself, because you're going through puberty and it doesn't always look that great, you know? It didn't look great for
It was her, it was not bad.
Oh, okay. Lucky her. Must be nice.
The interesting thing is that she seemed almost pathologically against like a makeup or trying to doll herself up in any extent, and she still looks pretty fine.
Oh, wow.
So I Yeah, that was not the issue with her.
You say this knowing you can admit this was the issue with me, right? You didn't think I looked okay, right?
I don't know. I think you guys are probably around the same attractiveness level.
Oh no, then she probably felt super ugly because I looked freaking horrible. Okay, yeah. Then if you thought I looked okay as an adolescent, then we have words.
Oh, as an adolescence, I'm talking today. As an adolescence, yeah, you probably would have been, by average person, considered less attractive than her.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So she was. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to calibrate there.
No,
Yeah,
but
you have to admit.
again, I
Not
don't
everyone
like
goes
talking
through
about.
your ugly duckling phases. Not saying I became a swan, but I'm not at the nadir of my attractive.
Hold on. What I'm saying here is this is actually in. Okay, so it is weird to have to try to judge the attractiveness of a 15-year-old girl because she's a kid, right?
Well, especially
But
at school, and it's also sad that. Well, okay, maybe it's not because I was gonna
why
say
don't you
like
just
I don't
Google
remember
her,
other
Simone?
people
Hold
rating
on.
the
Why don't you
attractiveness of
just
the
Google
Columbine
her?
shooters, but I think they
Just,
did.
just Google her.
This is so bad. Oh yeah, no, she's attractive. She looks very sad, but she's an attractive. No, definitely, she looks way better than I did as a teen. Poor thing. I mean, I feel
Okay,
really,
so you
really,
see what
really
I mean
bad
when I'm
for
like
people
top
she hurt.
10% of women, right? Her age.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No,
But it's
she was.
weird to be sorry. I will say it is weird to have to say this about a 15-year-old, but it's actually important because when you're talking about teenage girls, a huge part of angst or hatred with the world can come from perceptions of their own attractiveness vis-a-vis other individuals.
Yeah.
And so it's important to be able to say, no, she was not unattractive. If anything, she was only attractive into the spectrum for somebody who never did herself up.
Also, though, let's keep very common issue: body dysmorphia in teenage girls. I mean, it's a
She
thing.
doesn't complain ever about being unattractive.
She doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't. So that clearly wasn't the issue here. The issue here was well, maybe, I mean, maybe she would have been better off if she was body dysmorphic because then her hatred would have turned inward. And like I said, she would have either gone trans or
I
anorexic or cut.
actually think that might be part of what led her to this form of radicalization.
Yeah, because she wasn't hating herself enough. She needed to hate herself more.
She didn't have an obvious excuse for all of the emotion she was feeling. She didn't
Mm.
have
She wasn't
I'm
ugly
feeling
enough.
this
Yeah.
because I'm ugly, or oh, I'm feeling this because I'm trans, or oh, I'm feeling this because I'm, X discriminated group.
Uh-huh.
She was a white straight girl, right? Like above average attractiveness. So there was no outlet other than just no. It's just society that's broken.
Mm.
When you get this black pilled.
Mhm.
And I also think that her goal for trying to fix society is interesting because she didn't feel like she had agency to do that, which is a huge thing we focus on with our kids and Future Day and all that.
Yeah.
Yes, society is broken, but you have the agency to fix it.
Yeah, that's messed up. Yeah, but I think that was all just a just so story there that I'm, taking myself out, and she just hurt and she was angry, and it was displaced aggression against herself and others that she turned to.
Yeah.
In the face
And the final continue.
Mm.
So the final line here I clipped is, the wolf hunts its prey and continues life with no other bruises or scars. There is no predator and prey anymore. It is all filth walking. There's nothing more with filth. It simply cannot die or make hunts real if only they want is value. Finally, one learns that boredom is a disease of civilization. That's what she concluded her manifesto with.
So it's ennui again.
Yeah, and if you look at her social media posts, they're very like pay attention to me sort of stuff leading up to this. They were things like the quiet ones always strike the loudest, and I'm not broken. I'm what you made me. They're almost like live, laugh, love of teenage angst.
I plan to be a school shooter. She just had that Pinterest board. Oh, what we should not be making light of. This is bad. They're not. This is
no. It is no. It
obviously-
should be. This is the way that you prevent this. Is you make light of it in a way where people who have these feelings realize that they are so basic they should be scoffed at and not to air them. because this is not what she expected. She expected to be thought of as weird or different or out there, because that's what she wanted to be thought of, as unique, not basic.
Yeah.
That's the biggest fear of every teenage girl, is that they'll be thought of as ordinary.
Oh no.
I'll put the American Beauty
face
scene
it.
here.
I don't think there's anything worse than being ordinary.
You haven't even seen American Beauty all the way through. I tried to watch it with you and you like stopped.
No, but I'm gonna give you clips from Virgin Suicides, because that also is just so.
You're not even old enough to know how bad life gets.
Obviously, Doctor. You've never been a 13-year-old girl.
And then other clips here, quotes, "The countdown has begun. They'll know what I mean when the time comes."
Well, and I do wonder what if the boyfriend has access to this Google Doc. Did he not?
No, this is not Google Doc stuff. This is stuff she was posting publicly leading up to this.
No. But I'm referring to the Google Doc manifesto that he shared.
I wouldn't have thought that this definitely meant a school shooting was coming. This
I mean, you weren't 90% sure.
Genuinely, my thoughts if I was a boyfriend is she's gonna spell check this before she does the school shooting. Like, I'm gonna grammar check this before. I'll get scared when she grammar checks her manifesto.
Oh,
but
boy.
an ungrammar checked manifesto, I'm like, she's probably not. No one's gonna leave that public.
You've been seriously depressed before. You just kind of things fall through the cracks.
Here are some other social media posts leading up to this.
Okay.
I am a shadow, but I will make them see.
Oh. Well, if she wasn't dead already, she'd die of the cringe as she read back what she'd posted.
Yeah, actually, a lot of this reads to me somebody who might have become like an interesting based person if they had made it out of this phase.
And that is the tragedy. That is, I mean, well, the tragedies, the innocent people too who were killed by this, which is devastating. I mean, we freak out. I mean, our son asked to go to public school, and one of my first thoughts when we're like, well, I mean, you want to try it out, but I'm like, oh, I don't want him to get shot. It's just a thing in American public schools, and I don't like that. And this is no.
Stanley, well, do you want to tell your father about what happened at school today?
Well, I flunked my math quiz.
No, the other thing.
What other thing?
Oh, the school shooting?
Yes, the school shooting.
Oh, yeah, some kid shot up the school.
Was it you?
No.
Did you get shot?
No.
Oh. Well, what's this about failing a math quiz?
Yeah, that's really sad.
We should get flak jackets for our kids. Good weight training anyway,
That'd actually be quite a thing, and I think we should do it.
Did our kids go to school in flak jackets?
If he won't leave public school, we will send him in a bulletproof vest. And other people might make fun of him, and he's like, hey, school shootings are real. Like, he'd be known as like such a thing on campus.
Oh, he'd just be like, punch me, bro. Because he keeps saying bro now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, bro. He won't
my
stop.
God, bro.
Everything's bro. Oh boy. Jeez. Okay. I need to get him on like 1950s slang. That'd be much better. Gee willikers.
Gee willikers.
Come at me, sir.
But yeah, you're right. I love you to death, Simone. And I think it's important to investigate things like this so that we can learn how to raise our kids better and to avoid becoming this sort of person, because people are always like, oh, your kids are gonna like kill you or go crazy or whatever, right? And I think that it's very important that we investigate why people actually go crazy. Like, what are they talking about?
Well, so let's break it down. Make sure they're heard. Give them agency, because she really didn't feel like she had agency in the world. Give them hardship and responsibility, and make them touch grass. And by make them touch grass, I mean surround them with things that make them realize that the world is not all about them, that there are other people around them who also have needs and also live in the world. So they realize that they're a small, yes, they're small, and yes, they're meaningless, but they can also fix things and make a big difference in other people's lives and in the world, because she gotten half the way there, right? I'm small, I'm meaningless, no one cares. But she didn't go a little bit further to be like, oh, and because other people don't care about me, they only care about themselves, I can impact their lives in a way that's very meaningful to them, you know, and I can change the world, because a lot of people are very thoughtless
Well,
and not
yeah.
changing it.
And I think the final thing is have a masculine, goal-directed figure in their lives. And when people hear masculine today in an online environment, what they hear is, oh, like
Andrew
Andrew Tate, right? Yeah, and I always point out, no, 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 you don't want to be the Claudius from the movie Gladiator. You want to, or the Commodus from Gladiator. You want to be the Marcus Aurelius. Maximus, you want to be the leader, the person with a vision for a better future, because that is what women actually are drawn to. They are drawn to individuals with agency who want to make the world a better place and have a plan for doing that, at least an aspiration of doing that. If you look at her complaints about her father, it's stuff like he sat around all day smoking weed. Like that is the antithesis of that, right? This sort of mindset.
When I hug our kids each night and tell them that I love them and tell them that their job is to fix the world and they promise to fix the world, I really mean it. I'm like, I really need you to fix the world, Octavian, Torsten, Titan. Like, please, you don't understand. Like, but actually,
I love it. Well, because no one else is. That's always a weird thing to me, that so many people are like, wow, you guys like so have like main character syndrome. And it's like, no one else is doing anything. Like, what? You have to have main character syndrome. Main character syndrome isn't a bad thing. Everything of grandeur in this world was achieved by somebody with delusions of grandeur. That is the
all grandeur starts with delusions. Yes, it is. It is proper.
That is the only way you fix things. You have to be willing to have the type of aspirations for yourself and for the future that when you tell someone, like Noah's Ark, they're like, wow, that's fucking crazy. And you're like, well, no one else is doing it. Anyway, love you to death. Have a great day.
I love you too. Hug your family.
And be nice to your parents, people. If you're a teenager and you want to look down on them, you are pre-programmed to feel that way. Try not to. Try to see some continuity. Look to your ancestors if you can't admire your parents.
I love you. I hope people get better. I'm sorry for everyone who was hurt by this. The end.
The end. All right. And we'll do the totally straight next.
Totally. I saw something that about historical spoons. Remember when we went to that museum in St. Andrews and they had the spoon that you needed to take to the cafeterias to eat?
No, I don't.
You don't remember there was like a little like glass case that showed someone's spoon, because every time you went to the cafeteria to eat at the university when it was first founded, you needed your spoon.
And this would have been in the 1400s. That's wild.
Yeah, like a long time ago. You know, everyone had their own utensils. And this concept of being born with a silver spoon actually probably meant that you were born with a silver spoon, like really fancy, you know, instead of maybe like a wooden or iron spoon or whatever it is that everyone else ate with. And now I understand why that ceremonial gift came to be. Because I never.
I had a silver spoon as a kid. I remember it among my baby gifts because I saw them.
Yeah, that it's still a common ceremonial baby gift in some cultures to give them a silver spoon, but I never understood it or the phrase "he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth." And now I get it. If you live in a society where everywhere you go, you have to have an eating utensil. You go to a restaurant, you have to bring your eating utensil. Yeah. You go to a cafeteria, you have to bring your eating utensil. You go to your family's dinner table, you bring your own eating utensil. If you are showing up with the Ferrari of eating utensils, wow. Well,
everybody notices that. Everyone notices that.
Yeah, because otherwise you have to save up for a nice spoon, you know.
By the way,
people sprung for in the past.
You did a great job with the salsa you made me. A few notes.
Okay.
Blend it longer. Some things, especially the jalapenos, were not properly chopped up. Like they were still really big chunks. But other than that, really solid job.
Yeah, I think the recipe that I was following just had you put everything into. The thing is, they had you put everything into a blender, but we don't have a blender. We only have a food processor, and it doesn't quite blend non-chopped foods the same way, so I just have to account for that.
Should we get a blender? They don't cost much.
Thinking about getting one on Black Friday, but we just don't have a lot of space for appliances, and we have.
Are you serious? We have an entire basement with shelves.
It's already so cluttered. If you get we can get a blender if you get rid of those plant things that you're never going to use again that are taking up so much space. A deal?
No, not at all. I
Oh,
will use those again.
Okay,
Or
then.
the kids will use them.
okay, how about this? You need to use them or they will disappear in 30 days. Yeah?
No, because the kids will likely use them.
You really think so?
I really think so, yes.
All right.
Gideon, I wanna ask you about the really cute note you had written for me saying, "Mommy, I'm going to give you money tomorrow. I love you, Mom, from Dear Octavian." Why did you decide to write that note? Because you wanted to be nice? But we have to find it first. Hi, Titan! Hello, love! Hi! Ah, big hug! You're so fun. Do you want some popcorn for dinner? I made some.
What's this, Mommy?
Yeah, buddy. What?
Those are mine.